We recording? Okay, great. So thanks for joining us today, everybody. We're really excited about the opportunity to have Herb with us today, and I'll let him tell you a little bit more about himself. But one of the things we're excited about is offering students more opportunities for work experience. I was going to say opportunities again. It's just a really good word right now. Placements and possibilities. That's another good word. So we've invited Herb today to tell us a little bit more about some of those possibilities and what they can look like in our context. And we're going to talk a little bit about DL, but as well our current pandemic kind of situation and what that looks like. So Herb, did you want to start by just telling us a little bit about you and how you're...
Yeah, so I think if are you sharing the screen at this point already?
I can do that right now.
Yeah, and on that first page, it's got a little bit of some of my contact information. Like I said at the beginning, you know, feel very free, and I'll say that throughout, feel very free to contact me. You know, this just becomes, I think, a starting point, and, you know, really feel very free to tap me on the shoulder throughout. Yeah. So as soon as you've got that first page, I'll talk about that a little bit and a little bit demystify the role that I have in the province as well and how we arrived at this, right, Laura? So I don't see a screen yet. Am I correct?
We're working on it.
No worries.
You might need to make me the host again. I don't know if it's not letting you. It's fine.
I wonder. Can you try now, Laura?
Sure. Oh yeah, it let me now. Thanks, Michelle.
There we go.
Excellent.
We're ready to go. Excellent. So, yep, I can see it there. I'm just going to move that aside, hide those. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to start from the bottom up there, actually, on that first screen. So there's my email, and I love to just also work with cell phone and just a text message for questions. Timothy Christian School in Chilliwack's my home school. I've been there for 41 years and kind of gone through an evolution of, you know, of different job descriptions at Timothy. I would say my primary role at Timothy Christian School right now is supporting work experience, internships, youth work and trade, so apprenticeship programs, and the whole career development area at Timothy Christian School. Then I'm going to go up a little bit. Society of Christian Schools. So I don't know if you know the FISA BC structure, but there are these different associations. And the one association that our school happens to belong to, Timothy Christian School, is SCSBC, Society of Christian Schools of BC. And I'm the Career Development Coordinator for SCSBC, supporting all of the independent schools, not just from SCSBC, but all independent schools throughout the province, north, south, east, and west, in career programs, and primarily in grades 9 through 12. Then second last one is the Minister of Education shoulder tapper for independent schools. Strange title, but that's what I've been doing with Laura, tapping her on the shoulder. She's been tapping on mine. That's how we arrived at this. So independent schools across the province, but in the area of career programs. And then the industry training, that acronym, ITABC, I don't know if that's a new one for you. ITABC for independent schools. I'm the coordinator for programs. So let's say you've got a student who is interested in the trades, or you're interested in putting on a Youth Discover Trades event, then Industry Training Authority would defer that one to me to help support and run you through that. Does that make sense? Any questions on that first slide? All good to go? Then I think we'll go to the next slide there, Lauren. Yep. So I'm just going to touch on two bullets here and how we arrive at career development programs. I think being adopted primarily, and I think in a real escalation in the independent schools just more recently in the last 5 years. And I'm just going to put in these two bullets that students today are seeking an education that's personalized, purposeful, but those two key words, an education in career education that has opportunities for meaningful exploration and experiences. And that comes in the second bullet with, students having the opportunity to do community connections, real life context, develop mentorships, and firm believer that not all the learning happens. Now, when I would be talking to brick and mortar schools by no means have the corner of learning and its experiences outside the school environment. And I think in your context, it would be experience a student can have beyond the DL course programs that your students are in and so on. So does that resonate at this point? Make sense? Yeah. Okay, then we'll go to the next slide. So to kind of underline that, so I've just, with the permission of these students, looked at what a career exploration and what career development can look like in a school. This is in my own home school, Timothy Christian School, just kind of a snapshot of students learning outside the classroom. And I'll just go from top left all the way down to the bottom. So the top left is a student who went out for a 1-week work experience in the vet office, holding the little dog there, third one over. Really consolidated her career pathway. The next one over is a gentleman sitting in an engineering drafting office for a 2-week work experience placement. And that student has gone on beyond that to BCIT this year and has helped in that key pathway experience. Third one over is a student who was in an IEP, the girl in the greenhouse. Very much hard to strike up a conversation with her. I went to visit her in the workplace and we talked for about 3 hours, her just showing what a greenhouse production system looks like. And this has become her pathway. It's become her passion. She was there actually for 2 weeks in work experience. So I think if you've got students in IEPs or whatever the special needs, she started off with some EA support, TA support, and from there it just went rolling from there. So great experience for her. The next one is at an RCMP, volunteer, community volunteering. Top right is a student in doing accounts receivable, bookkeeping at a huge lumber operation that's in Chilliwack area. Next one over is a real interesting one. Students went out, 2 students for a 3-week hovercraft experience with the Canadian Coast Guard out of Sea Island in Richmond. Hold on for a moment. Just, that should not be happening now. There we go. And then the next one over is an electrician in a trade in the electrician area. Third one over is in a hospital. Then I'll skip right down to the bottom. The student in a heavy-duty mechanic trades program, so that would be in an apprenticeship program. Mechanics, so the one standing in front of all the tools is mechanics. Student has gone on to become an automotive technician. And then the one girl there is in a hospital setting. You can see that she's an X-ray lab technician. Fire department, a week with the fire department in the, looking at education programs and so on in the fire department program. And the last one is our school and a large number of students, that was last year and the years before, using humanitarian support and mission trips and study abroad type of trips to engage in some of the mentorship programs. So that's kind of what it can lead to. Does that make sense to you all? Yeah. Then I'll just look at the next slide there with you all. So I'm going to just touch on three programs, three career development programs. The first is work experience. And the acronym for that is WEX 12A, Work Experience 12A. There's also Work Experience 12B. And some schools call those work experiences within that course internships or co-op. At my school, I call them career exploration. And that has become a real critical area for independent school students at this point, work experience. Second one is a new course that students are tapping into through volunteer service opportunities. It's called Global Intercultural Studies 12A. So that's where students use their voluntary experiences. We'll look at that one in a moment. And then the third one is apprenticeship opportunities, youth working trades 11 and 12. So they're the three options. Okay, then we'll go to the next one. We'll go to work experience there, Laura. Yep, there we go. So that's the work experience. So students in, it's actually students in grades 10 through 12 or students in grades 10, 11, and 12 have the opportunity to use either their paid work experiences. So let's say they are currently working in paid part-time employment. They complete a training plan and their employment is at a WorkSafe BC site. They can use their paid work forward dated hours towards credit for their work experience program. All right. Really feel free to ask me any questions on as I'm going along here. It's pretty hard to gauge here, I always find with Zoom, if that resonates. Okay, so that's paid work. And then second one is they could also use, and that's primarily what we've been doing prior to COVID. And we'll talk about what COVID's implications will be with that. But adding their own after-school unpaid work experiences, again at WorkSafe BC sites. And in brick and mortar schools, students have gone out in, let's say, a week or two of work experience and using those hours towards the 90 hours that are required for work experience. Right? Now, I should just clear up here. Running this program through a DL course, through Key Learning Center, for example, has the advantage of a student being able to start the course in grade 10, do the online learning modules in grade 10, we'll come to those in a moment, and then start building those hours a bit in grade 10, some more in grade 11, and finishing off the 90 hours in grade 12. So it could be a combination of paid, unpaid, it could be all paid, or it could be all unpaid work experiences. Does that make sense to all of you?
Just to clarify, is this for work experience 12A?
Yes, it is.
Gotcha.
If they were to put together an additional 90 hours, then there is a second course, WEX 12B.
Thank you.
So feasibly, a student could earn up to 8 credits in work experience if they would put together, you know, the 180 hours of work experience. Yeah? Okay, next slide there, Laura. All right, so this is a model that a large number of independent schools now are tapping into. Key Learning Center, let me just demystify that one, is a DL school up in Fort St. John. They're a public DL school, and they run a very successful work experience program that students tap into independent schools. And I would say that 95+% of the students in work experience in the province tap into Key Learning Center's model of work experience. The teacher is one teacher. Actually, the teacher has I think close to 700 students in work experience at this point in WEX from independent schools all over the province. And they complete the workplace safety lessons, the employability skills, resume writing, and they cover all the paperwork there as well in the course, built in the course, for liability, for volunteer or paid agreement plans. Also, the whole idea of, where was I going? Oh, worksite supervision as well. That's all part of the course that they put together. Second, they build the hours over grades 10, 11, and 12, and they culminate those hours with a final project at the completion of their 90 hours. And what a fair number of students have been doing is doing their school graduation capstone project and making part of that capstone a reflection of their work experience, right? And then that gets reported back to Key Learning Center, assessed by, in this case, it would be assessed by a teacher from CLEOS, and then it would be forwarded to Key Learning Center as their capstone mark and, their work final project mark, and that would become the final project mark for WEX 12A, and then Key Learning Center would report that mark back onto the student transcript. Does that make sense? Good. Shall I just keep going here? Okay, next slide. So here we go for work experience, what some of the structure looks like. I won't go over this in too much detail. I think we're going to run out of time for that. But the students complete a 2-credit, what's called a Connect Ed 11 digital literacy course. And that talks about what students can complete this one, by the way, in about, I would say, 4 hours of online learning. So these have little modules, and I'll go through some of that description in a moment, but online modules around what's Moodle, what are some of the safe, maybe let's go to the next slide, and that'll talk about that a little bit. There we go. So module 1 is, what's an online learner? They take module 1 assignment, so that's basically 2 tries at a quiz. Go to the next one, next slide. Internet history, browser basics, see that? The cloud. So again, a 25 question quiz, that's module 2. Module 3, what is it about the digital age, social networking, acceptable use of the internet. And module 4, there we go. What are some of the popular social network platforms? And module 5, the last one. And then at the completion of that, students receive credit for the 2-credit Connect Ed. It's a bar course, but reported back from Key Learning onto the student transcript. And that opens the door to the next slide, Work Experience 12A. So now before the students go out into the workplace, now we'll talk about what COVID implications will be in a moment as well. But students complete an online unit on workplace safety. You know, what is WorkSafe BC? How do you stay safe? What are some of the important employability skills? Students complete resume writing practice. They complete the work experience agreement form. Now, this year, now let's talk about this year with COVID. If a student would start WEX this year with the eye of eventually getting into unpaid placements, then everything what I've just mentioned there so far, down to resume writing, will activate the student in WEX 12A. And I think those of you from, heavily involved in your DL school will know what activation means, right? So now the students have completed 15% of the course, and now they're poised to start whenever possible an unpaid placement or a paid placement. So let's talk about what COVID has done at this point. So the site visit can be done virtually. So if you had a student who is interested in this and is saying, you know what, I can work with my mom or my dad, or I can work with a relative of mine in a placement, it's paid or it's unpaid, it's a workplace, WorkSafe BC site, you could actually do the work site visit virtually. So all work experience now, because of COVID, allows you to do that through a phone visit or a Zoom visit with the employer. Could be done over email. And you understand where we're going with that? The other thing to keep in mind is that you might have students out there that are already involved in paid work. Say they're in grades 10, 11, and 12, and they might have opportunities to continue to tap into, the COVID training they've had, be in the work placement, not add another burden to the employer, but just continue with their paid placement and be able to do, you'd be able to complete a work site safety agreement with them or form visit with the employer. And then the students complete a training plan. Upon completion, they do an employer evaluation. And then the students, if they've done the 90 hours, would complete the final project, which is your school's model and assessment that you build into that final project. I think I'll pause there for a moment to just address any questions.
I have a question just about number of hours.
Yep.
So do the students need to activate? They can't backdate hours that they've volunteered or done paid work prior to activation. It has to be post-activation, those 90 hours. Is that correct?
Yeah, so when they want to start chipping into the 90 hours, it cannot be done until the third last bullet has been put in place. A volunteer placement agreement and a paid or unpaid training plan. That's when they have to start forward dating the hours. So it's not activation, right? So they cannot backdate hours before those training plans are in place.
Gotcha. Thank you, Herb.
Yeah. And in order for a student to go into the work placement, I don't know if you're familiar with the WEX 12A program guide, will clearly state that students have to have workplace safety training. So that's why workplace safety is in there as one of the units that is in their course. Got the idea on that? So you cannot say, oh, this past summer students have had this paid or unpaid work, and now we're going to give them credit for those hours. No, it always needs to be forward dated hours. Okay. Next slide there. Okay, so that finishes off work experience. So the key with work experience, I think just to put it in a nutshell, it can be paid, it can be unpaid. Students, because of COVID, can start all the online modules. They can activate. They can be put in a position to actually start when a placement would become available for them. But the key would be that it's got to be a WorkSafe BC site and no backdating hours. Okay. Then I think we're ready to move into the next one, this second opportunity, and that's Global Intercultural Studies 12A, Service and Volunteering. This one is quite a bit different. This is not, I think the best way I can characterize this one is it's all about service and volunteering. It's not about career exploration. So here the students are putting themselves in a position where they are reflecting on, and I've got it on number 2, they're school related, they're local, they're community, they're international, their missions trips, whatever those experiences could be. But instead of 90 hours, it's 60 hours. This one's a little bit different in WEX also in that you don't have any WorkSafe BC coverage needs, requirements. Students go out and do these experiences in the local community or within their school setting if they're in the brick and mortar, or could be abroad once things start loosening up with COVID. But they are, again, the forward dated hours are upon registration into the course. So there's no training plan for this. Students cannot backdate hours before registration, but it's registration in the course gives them the ability to start forward dating all of the hours that they've got in place. Questions on that?
We've got a question in the chat from Jillian. It says, are these work placement experiences for 12A to be done at a workplace of interest for future career or any job they might currently have in order to collect the hours for the credit course?
So let me just respond to that. Because of COVID this year, I'm saying in a number of schools, what they're doing is the ideal is to use it as career explorations. But because of COVID, we're saying, well, if you've got paid work already, or you've got unpaid work, maybe it's not your full career exploration that you would normally do. But then show me on a training plan some of the new skills, if it's paid work, some of the new skills that you're going to be engaged in, and how this is going to be a new learning environment for you. Does that answer that question, Julian? Yeah?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out the difference between that and now the one you're starting to talk about now.
Yeah.
Aren't they like the same thing?
Yeah, no, service and volunteering is what can I give back to the community?
So is it a separate thing that they need the 90 hours for the 12A course of the work and then 60 hours as well of volunteer work?
No, this would be a second option. Students can do work experience and do work experience only. If students are saying, oh, we do work experience, but we also volunteer with the Red Cross, with our local soup kitchen, we're going abroad to do this, or in, you know, whatever it is. Service would be 60 hours that they're doing. What am I giving back to the community is the best way to describe that.
So can they collect these hours through multiple different places? Like say they volunteer a few hours for a month or so at a soup kitchen, and they volunteer coaching their brother's hockey team. They work a bit with their uncle in the summer, and then they go and work a bit at McDonald's. Can they kind of get everywhere?
Hold on. I'll stop you right there. So working with McDonald's and helping their uncle working, that would be work experience basket, right?
Yeah.
But if they're working at, let's say they're volunteering at the soup kitchen, they're involved in adopt a road cleanup, anything that they're giving back to the community, not direct benefit to themselves, in career exploration, that would be service and volunteering.
Okay.
Does
And they
that
can
make
start these in grade 10, grade 10 then if they're in grade 10?
They can actually start it in grade 9. So I have in grade 9, all of my grade 9 students, 30 of them, they have all registered for Global GIS 12A. They are now working through the online modules. You know, what is service? What does it mean for me? How am I going to reflect on this? And then they're going to be building those volunteer hours over grades 9 and 10, and if necessary, over 3 years.
Okay. So they should do this Connect at 11 as soon as they can, and then that way they can go on and do the 12A when they want. And
All right, so so Connect at 11 is a precursor to WEX 12A, right? That's one basket, right?
okay.
The second basket is service, and the precursor course for global intercultural studies, I think, is on the next slide.
Okay. So there's the 2 different paths they can take. They have precursors for each path,
Yep, here we go.
and
So here,
then they can do that whenever, so that whenever the opportunity comes up for them to do the volunteer work or to do the work experience, they have the online learning part already done,
Yep.
so that they can jump right into those then.
that's exactly what I would recommend, and that's what schools are getting themselves to do.
Okay.
You know, is they're doing the precursor courses, they're doing some of the activation, you know, some of the activation learning, online learning, and then once things clear up for WEX, they're going to go out and into the work placement if they need to get those 90 hours.
Okay.
And once things start up a little bit more for volunteering, or those students might just be already heavily engaged in building those hours, then they would build those hours for 60 hours for GIS 12A.
Okay.
So the
Thank you.
precursor course for GIS is World Citizenship 12. And this is a 2-credit course built very much around the model of ConnectEd. So I won't go over that too detailed, but again, I think in this one, there are 4 modules. And it takes my students about three hours to complete this course. What's volunteering? And that's next one. That's module 3, module 4, and then there we go. So module 4 back there is the last component. That gives them the 2 credits for world citizenship, opens the door, as it were, for GIS. However, I've got to say, students can start building the hours for GIS before they do this world citizenship. They can start building the hours for GIS, the 60 hours, the moment they have registered for GIS in Key Learning Centers course. All right, does that make sense?
I have a quick question about the GIS. Is there a 12B, Herb?
Yeah, there is actually. It's coming in October. So right now, Steve Hayes is the teacher, and he's building a second course. So the students would complete world citizenship, and that would open the door to 12A for 60 hours. And if they wanted to, an additional 60 hours for 12B.
Perfect.
Yep. So this would be the 4-credit course. So they would complete there is a log sheet, I think coming up in the presentation a little bit later on, is a log sheet that is part of the course. So someone from CLEOS would actually sign off on the student hours. So they do not need to go back to, you know, their Red Cross or their soup kitchen or Salvation Army to get signatures, but they would simply say, well, from April 25, 2020 to June 2020, I did 15 hours at the Salvation Army or the soup kitchen. And that is signed off by a CLEOS teacher. They would complete the online modules for GIS, and they would do a school-based, your own CLEOS school devised. All right, so now, Sam, you've done this, you've done this volunteering in the community. What does it mean to you? And then someone from CLEOS will, again, assess that, and that goes back to Key Learning Center for their assessment, and it's got to be done by a certified teacher at CLEOS, and then that gets added to the student final mark. Yeah?
Herb, is this
Next
something
week.
that they might be able to put towards like career life and capstone as well?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. Very good question. So let me just talk about that for a moment. So, if the career expiration's 30 hours, that's required for CLC, right? The ministry has very clearly stated that work experience and GIS could be used for that, in fact, for very authentic demonstration of their 30 hours of work experience or their career explorations.
So you can double dip on them both then.
Yeah, so double dipping is not even the terminology. So CLC has just got the requirement, 30 hours met of career explorations. And you can also do this. A large number of schools are doing this. Students do the capstone. And one component of the capstone is, all right, reflect for me on your service or your work experience. And you're just taking that strand out, and that becomes your assessment from CLEOS going back to Key Learning for their work experience, if they chose to do work experience, or GIS, or both.
Great.
And I should also mention to you that, by the way, WEX is, how you've got students for graduation need the 80 credits and they need an applied skills course. WEX is an applied skills course. Yeah. Next screen. I better pick up the pace a little bit here for you. Oh, that finishes off basket number 2, GIS. Any questions on that from any of you? Okay, so I think in summary, just going back to GIS for a moment, does not have to be WorkSafe BC sites. It's got to be forward dated hours, but forward dated upon registration with KLC. WEX is different. It's forward dated after the training plan and agreement form is in place with the employer. That's how those two differ. GIS is service and volunteering. What can I give back to the community? Work experiences, career explorations. What am I learning about my pathway and my soft skills and employability skills and so on? That's the real distinguishing trait. Okay. All right, let's talk about youth work and trades. I think this is where this one is important to point out to students. When you're talking about I think the last sentence there's a real common myth out there that there's only one secure pathway, and that pathway is you've got to go on to a university, post-secondary training model. That's the secure pathway, and we've really done a real disservice, and we've had the students not look at all the opportunities for real secure pathways for electricians, carpenters, plumbers, automotive technicians, and so on. And I think that's, if we can do our students a service, that it is to just put that back on track again with students, right? And there's a program that's in place called Youth Work in Trades, 11 and 12. These are 4 courses where students can actually get started on their apprenticeship training So if we go to the next slide, there we go. So if you have a student wondering or a parent wondering, oh, my son or daughter works part-time already, and they're working, can be even with their dad, it can be with a parent, it could be with an uncle, it could be with an employer, but in any one of those trades, and they have worked in the past, they are the students are called hidden apprentices. So they are probably building hours towards their apprenticeship without them knowing it. And they can get credits for those hours towards their apprenticeship training, but they can also get credits for those hours in the coursework. Later on, I'll be talking about those. So these are all of the skilled trades. The ones in red are Red Seal trades. The ones in black are BC certified. All right. Any questions so far? Okay, next slide. So the opportunity here with Youth Work and Trades, there are 4 courses, but is number 1 there for students to get a head start on earning their trade certification. So the hours that they need to complete their Red Seal program is shortened actually. Second, if they're already working in that trade, they get the workplace safety, the employability skills, career development. Third, if they complete 900 hours of employment in that trade, up until, I think I've got it here in the 5th point, but they've got until they turn 19 after graduation, if they need that long. So they can backdate hours. Let's say they've already worked during the summers in their trade. They can carry 240 hours towards their coursework, but they can carry all those hours towards the 900 hours required for the $1,000 Youth Work and Trades Award. All right. They earn 16 additional credits, so there are 4 courses. 120 hours of work-based hours are needed per course. Number 6 is important. This is not like WEX, although it could start with WEX, but this is for paid work in one of the trades, and it must be a WorkSafe BC site. Okay, that's a lot of information in numbers 1 through 6. Any questions on that? All right. Let's go further. So that's what a typical apprenticeship training module or model looks like. So if students were to wait after graduation and then say, I want to become a Red Seal automotive technician, it would take them 4 years. And of that 4 years, 80% is their practical training. See that? 20% is their classroom training. But the 80%, if the students are already working in that trade in, say, their grades 9, 10, 11, and 12 years, they can already build those hours and have maybe years 1 and 2 of their work-based training hours, maybe even possibly part of year 3, depending on how many hours they're working, completed. So they could feasibly get their Red Seal completed in 2 years instead of 4 years after graduation. So that's a real bonus for students. Yeah? Questions on that slide? Okay, next slide there. So I think it would be good if you have students perhaps even being polled and saying, well, are any of you hidden apprentices? Do any of you have part-time jobs in any one of these trades? And if that is the case, I really would welcome the opportunity to come alongside those students together with you and with parents and with their employers to get them looking at how do we get going with starting registration with industry training authority. How do we get these students into these apprenticeship programs? So I think a key would be, let's identify, are any of them hidden apprentices? Yeah, next slide. All right, I've talked a lot about registration with Key Learning Center. I think if any of your students are interested in, developing some of this partnership with Key Learning for either the WEX or the GIS or the Youth Work and Trades, it's very easy. That's the link for the online registration with Key Learning Center. I'd be more than willing to help, walk the students through that, or parents and students, that learning or that registration form. Your school would need to collect the ID and proof of residency from the student or from the parents, and that would have to go to Key Learning Center. You would have to send that information to Mr. Hayes, Steve Hayes, who is the teacher for GIS, work experience, and youth work and trades, because that would trigger the funding that Key Learning Center receives per student, per course. And then I think you're aware of the fact that Key Learning Center shares that revenue with your school to help support those students. So they will actually collect the full, because they're a public DL, they collect the full funding from the ministry per course. So rather than sitting, I think DL schools from independent are sitting at 60% funding, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the case, Laura? I think that's the case, right?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So because they're public, they are receiving the full 100% funding, and they're splitting that and saying, well, we will, because there's a component of assessment, site visits, of registration assistance coming alongside the students, they will share the 380 back to CLEOS to help support each student. And that's based upon the activation of the students in those courses. Okay, next slide. There we are. I just want to leave it open here for any questions. I could meet with, over Zoom, obviously, for any further implementation help. I could answer any questions on my cell, and that's my email as well. So maybe I can just open it up. I think the next one is a questions page. We can just go from there. Any questions?
I'm just wondering, I have to look up the names of the courses. The prereq courses, World Citizenship 12 for GIS, and
Connect Ed.
thank you. They're each two credits. So could students take those to make, like both of those to make up one course? I'm thinking of students that we work with that might be better suited for GIS and not necessarily work experience, but might dabble in work experience, but not complete the full 90 hours and the capstone. They might not be capable of doing that, but I think they'd really benefit from what you outlined, that the 2-credit intro course would cover. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, very good question. So Kim, let me answer it this way. There are a large number of independent schools that do Connect at 11 2 credits only, period. And
Okay.
then they park it. So they take, for example, a big component of, let's say in CLE, I want to do something with digital literacy and online safety and protocols and everything else. Yeah. So they work through the 2-credit modules for Connect Ed. or if you want to do something around world citizenship only, 2 credits, or if you said Connect Ed, world citizenship, 4 credits total, 2 separate courses, no intention of going on with WEX or GIS, not a problem. Great idea.
That sounds awesome. Thank you.
Any other? Oh, I should mention as well that Connect Ed 11 opens the door for work experience, but also opens the door for youth work and trades later on. Okay, other questions? Oh, and I should mention, I think there as well, you know, I mentioned that in one of the pictures there, students on IEPs and whatnot else. Really, in that registration process, if you have a student on an IEP, clearly identify that to Steve Hayes in registration and just give, you know, the nature of the IEP, and he makes all the modifications that are needed from his end as well, and full understanding that the students will need a degree of support that you're able to put in place or that they will need to put in place.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.
Any other questions?
Herb, I have a quick one. I'm wondering, are folks having any luck finding placements right now during COVID? Realistically, like what's that looking like?
Yeah, so our schools and our school at this point, so let me put it, I'll just come from what our school is doing. Every year we have 30 grade 10 students go out for 3 job shadow days. They're supposed to be going out later on this month. Our grade 11s go out for a full 40-hour week in January, and our grade 12s all go out for a 40-hour week. We have made a real conscious decision at this point to say we are not going to allow our students from our school to yet inundate the workplaces in our community with, you know, further one more thing to worry about, right? Where have you been? Have you been under a rock type of idea? You understand where I go? I do not want to burn any bridges for all the years of successful placements we've had. So, and I think that's the case with huge number of schools at this point. So that's why Key Learning Center recognizes that and says, activation is going to look quite a bit different this year. Activation is going to be get all the way through up to the point of the work agreement, the placement agreement. Don't do the placement agreement yet. All right? Do the, you know, the online safety, do the employability skills, do the resume writing, if it's for WEX. Now, if you have a student's, but let me just backtrack for a moment. The grade 10s, now just try to picture, we're in Chilliwack. All of my 30 grade 10 students all have part-time work that they go to. They all do. Every single one of them go to part-time jobs. That is unusual. But because of that, I'm saying all of you will go to your work placements, but what you're doing is you're bringing back a training plan for me to say, how are you able to now do some paid work or unpaid work with a new skill set that you're going to be bringing back to the school and for your learning. So I think now, if you've got, now I've got some students that are saying, you know what, can I go with my aunt so-and-so who is working in this school, and that school is more than willing to have me? Yep, go for it. But I've been really clearly communicating with parents that's not a requirement. If that's initiated by you, go for it. That answer that?
Yeah, thank you, Herb. I think we'll have some students who are in a position where they already have, you know, something lined up through an existing relationship. So it'd be great to be able to leverage those if all parties are comfortable.
Yes,
So that makes sense. Thank you.
good. Any other questions there?
If my son wants to start the Connect Ed 11, which is for the 2 credits that he has to do before the work experience 12, and the world citizenship modules that he needs before the GIS 12, how does he do that? Does he just, do we contact Cleos and set it up through them to do those? Is that where we go to do that? I also have a daughter that's in brick and mortar school in grade 9. I didn't know any of this could be started in grade 9. I thought it was only grade 10 because I was told from the school last year, grade 10, grade 10, grade 10. Where would I go for her? Would I just talk to her brick and mortar school and have it set up through them to be able to do these 2 courses?
How do you want me to respond to that, Laura?
I can take the first one. I'm not so sure about the second one, but for your son, Jillian, definitely connect with us and we'll walk you through the steps. We already have a lot of the paperwork that you would need to submit. We have that on file already from your enrollment with us. So that makes it kind of easy breezy. So yeah, email our team and we'll walk you through.
And that's his best idea right now for him would be to start those 2 courses because he's not actually out of the placement yet. He doesn't have a part-time job at all. Just to, like you said, do those 2 courses as far as he can until the placement, until we figure out COVID and where he would go, and maybe even till next year because he's only grade 10 now, but just do the beginning part for now, wait till next year, everything's settled down, and then go do work placement. But at least he can get the 2 courses done mostly, or 75% of it now. Does that make sense?
I think that's a great idea, Jillian. Yeah,
Okay.
and then you can leave those courses open up to the end of grade 12 if needed.
He could actually even, go from, Connect Ed, do a subsequent registration for WEX 12A, right? And then do the online learning modules, for WEX, like the resume, the safety, get himself activated in WEX. And then the only thing missing is the completion of the pathway towards 90 hours of experience.
Okay, I was thinking the Connect Ed was like the resumes and that kind of thing, but I'm guessing that's separate in the Connect, the resume, and that is part of the actual work experience. Okay.
I would request from Laura the PowerPoint that I just we went through. So it gives a bit of an outline. Connect Ed is more the online literacy. And WEX, the opening modules are all around workplace safety, employability skills, how to conduct an interview, or how to follow through in an interview, workplace safety. And then as soon as, COVID would clear up here, or he does find a placement, then he gets a training plan with an employer. And if it's paid or unpaid, he could do, 10 hours or 90 hours or whatever the case might be.
And they can do multiple ones then? So say he goes and checks out one career for 10 hours, he can check out another one for 15, another one for 20, kind of thing, up to the 90 hours that they need to get?
Yeah, it creates a bit more paperwork for Cleos because Cleos would have to have a new training plan for you to submit back to them. For every placement needs a new training plan.
It does, however, give him more variety and a chance to check out different career options instead of just one or 2.
Absolutely. The key would be, remember, he's got to check out sites that are WorkSafe BC sites.
For sure. So are you able to answer my question then if Laura isn't regarding my daughter in brick and mortar? Should we be talking to that school in order to start these same things for her as well?
Is the brick and mortar public or independent?
Public.
Okay. They're probably not familiar with this as much, but there is absolutely no reason at all for them not to allow, unless they've got a policy in place that does not allow cross-enrollment with the DL. But if I see no reason why they would have that policy in place. Do you, Laura?
I just don't understand how the funding would work, because if she does all of her schoolwork at the public school and just wants to do these 2 courses through Cleos, you guys wouldn't be getting any funding then because she's in grade 9, and don't they only pay per course for grade 10, 11, and 12 students?
Yeah, cross enrollment is tricky at grade 9, and usually brick and mortar schools aren't as comfortable with it. We've done it a few times, but there has to be kind of an agreement and kind of buy-in on both ends, and it gets tricky in grade 9. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just let me just clarify that one as well. That money that Cleos is receiving is not funding; it's shared revenue, right? So it's a funding split down the middle, and that funding split down the middle probably doesn't do any good to the public brick and mortar, and they're probably less likely to want to support the student in a KLC WEX program, right? But they could still take the 2-credit, Connect Ed and the 2-credit World Citizenship for the learning experience, and then do work experience through the work experience that the public brick and mortar school offers.
Yeah, I'm really lost.
Yeah, do you understand that one, Laura?
Yeah, I think the best way forward, Jillian, might be to talk to your public school and just kind of probe a little bit and ask them what the opportunities are, if they would be willing to do a cross enrollment at grade 9. And if they are, then I'd be happy to talk to you about what that could look like, and we can help walk you through the steps. And I'm sure Herb would be happy to help too with Key Learning Center. Yeah.
Okay, if not, she does still have a few years, so it's not like it's the end of the world if she does do it in grade 10, which might make it a little easier for cross enrollment, is that if that's what she chooses, if they don't do these kind of courses at the school, public school that she's at.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, good question. Any others? I don't like Zoom. But that's good. This has gone well. I'm hoping, because there's no way of really gauging if it's gone right over the top of everyone's head, if I've just snowed everyone under. But I think the key would be, Laura, if you just get the PowerPoint out to everyone, right? And that way, you just feel very free, any one of you there, just to touch base with me.
Herb, I enjoy being in person better too, but from my perspective, that was very helpful. And I took a ton of notes, and I look forward to reflecting back on the PowerPoint, but I'm quite excited. So thank you very much.
No worries at all. No worries.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, Herb. And I'll share your contact information as well as the slides with everybody who was with us today, and then probably our greater community too, who weren't able to attend tonight. So we might have some more questions trickling in over the next few weeks.
Absolutely. Not a problem. Have a good night.
Wonderful. Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care. Bye-bye.